Hi guys, I'm Luke Mathews, an Australian Olympian over the 800 and the 1500 metres, and you are listening to the Physical Performance Show.
And the winner is...
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
Phelps with 10 meters left. And 3 minutes too good. The crowd roaring. Freeman gets down.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Listeners, welcome to another episode of the Physical Performance Show. I trust this finds you well, and I hope you've been pursuing your physical best and likewise enjoying some previous episodes of the program. Last week we featured Peter Jacobs in the lead up to the Hawaii Ironman World Championship Triathlon, and things didn't quite go as planned for Peter, and likewise other guests that we've had on the show to date who also raced, such as Brent McMahon, Tim Van Berkel. Both boys put in a very credible and solid effort. And Jenny Alcorn, who had a sensational race once again in her category, finishing second in the World Championship. So well done to those previous guests. Today's episode, as always, is lovingly brought to you by Pogo Physio. We exist to help you perform at your physical best, and we do this through our industry-first, fixed fee and unlimited access 2, 6 and 12-week finish line programs. It's really simple. We want everyone who walks through the doors of Pogo to get the high five moment where we tell you that we love you, but you've finished rehabilitation. And you can achieve this outcome through unlimited access to hands-on physiotherapy and associated services and access to state-of-the-art technology and rehabilitation equipment. It's all backed by a finish line program guarantee. For more information, jump over to pogophysio.com.au. And if you're interstate, stay tuned for Pogo Partners bringing the finish line programs to practices near you. Massive thank you to you, the faithful listener, if it's your return 80th time listening in today, and big welcome if it's your first time tuning into the program today. Big thanks to the good folk leaving reviews over on iTunes. That helps incredibly by getting this show into the ears of more listeners who, just like you, are looking to pursue and perform at their physical best. In particular, this week, I wanted to thank This Show Rocks. This Show Rocks left a review, rated the program at 5 stars on iTunes, and commented, "Love the show, particularly the runners, but also enjoy the variety of athletes you manage to get on the show. The level of detail and insight you draw out of each athlete with your questions is terrific. Keep the awesome work going." Thanks so much, This Show Rocks. And listeners, if you'd like to leave a review, it's simple. Jump over to iTunes on your desktop. You can't do it from your smartphone, and click ratings and review and rate away. Listeners, today's guest is Mr. Luke Mathews. Luke is an Australian Olympic track runner hailing from Melbourne. Luke competed in the Rio 2016 Olympic Games, competing in both the 800 and the 1500 metres. Luke made his international debut at the 2014 World Junior Athletics Championships, where he was a semi-finalist in the 800 metres. He made a real breakthrough at the senior level in 2016. He won the Hunter Track Classic. He ran with world record holder and dual Olympic champion David Rudisha right to the line then in the Melbourne Track Classic, where Luke recorded a personal best of 1:45.16 for the 800. It was the fastest time for the 800 metres by an Aussie for nearly 35 years. This is a great episode where Luke walks us through the highs, the lows, and the learnings of his journey with his athletic career to date. There's lots more we're going to see from Luke Mathews, but let's hear from him first. So let's jump straight in. Listeners, this is going to be a whole lot of fun. Joining us today on the Physical Performance Show, we've got Luke Mathews, Australian 800 metre, 1500 metre track star, 2016 Rio Olympic Games Australian representative. Luke, I've been looking forward to connecting with you ever since you really grabbed my attention at the Nitro Athletics event earlier this year in 2017. So welcome to the show, Luke.
G'day, Brad, and g'day, listeners. How's it going? Well, thanks for having me on. Nitro Athletics, that seems like ages ago now, but it was a good event, and certainly helps me on Instagram, and definitely helped my following from some fans. So yeah, thanks for having me.
So Luke, well, let's actually start with something a little bit fun and exciting. What's one thing that scares Luke Mathews?
One thing that scares Luke Mathews. All right, so I've never been diagnosed or anything, but if I saw a doctor, I would definitely be diagnosed with arachnophobia. I am petrified of spiders, and it's not even that, it's not even those big, like, creepy crawlies, like those big, like, tarantulas or the bird-eating spiders. It's from that to bloody, daddy long legs to anything. They just absolutely scare me. I can't even, I've watched the Harry Potters before, and during the Chamber of Secrets, when there's the spider scene, I have to close my eyes the whole way through. So it's pretty embarrassing, but that's what scares Luke Mathews.
Any close encounters with the spider that's seeded this fear?
No, not really. I don't even know where it came from. I think it was just, actually, I think as everyone is pretty scared of spiders. When I watched 8-Legged Freaks when I was about 5 years old, and I don't think I slept properly in my own bed for about 2 weeks afterwards. So, and I think it's just just extended from there. But spiders, they're my kryptonite. That they scare the hell out of me.
So maybe we need to lay down a few spiders at the start of a race and see you take off, mate, and do a PB. But Luke,
I'd break the world record if they were chasing me down.
So, mate, let's take us through your genesis story. What's the Luke Mathews story? How did you get started in track and field, and when did you first recognise that you had some serious talent?
So it started for me when I was 5 or so years old, and that's the type of time when your mum or your dad are trying to get you in whatever sport's possible. And I was playing tennis, I was playing footy. I think I might even tried a little bit of soccer here and there. But I was doing every sport, and I was going down to Little Athletics as like an under 6 or whatever it was, and I was pretty good. I was running like the 400 and the 100 and the 70 meters and even the hurdles, and I was winning by about a country mile. So I always knew that I was relatively talented, and I was playing footy, which is AFL in Melbourne, in Victoria. So I was playing that, and I was on the footy field, and I was pretty good as a junior, purely based on the fact that I could run and I could kick a little as well. So I kind of dabbled in all sports until I was maybe 15, 16, and then at that point I was kind of going through a bit of crossroads, and I wasn't really enjoying running as much as I would have liked. And then at the end of 2011, I pretty much said to Mum, I want to try playing footy, and I want to try getting drafted, because that's the type of time when it's pretty crucial in being spot on with all your footy. So I took about maybe 6 months to a year, I was pretty much retired from running. So had a little crack at that, and then got to the point which was it was about April 2012, and I don't know, I was on the footy field one day, and I just thought, I'm not really enjoying this like I used to. I kind of want to go back to running. And then, a couple of hours after the match, I'd called my coach and I said, no, I'm not going to play anymore. And then pretty much then I started the cross country season for my school. And then that was in halfway through 2012. And then from there, just started getting better. And then 6 months later, I ended up, I think I won the national championships for the all schools for the 3K and the 1500. And then from then on, I was, running nationals, and then 2 years later, I made World Juniors, and then 2015, I was my first year as a senior, and then that took me up to 2016 and 2017, where I started to have a fair bit of success.
Was there anyone that came alongside you firstly, the football, that was a legitimate, hopeful career for you, right? That you just sort of fell out of love with, or just realised that wasn't going to be your path? What happened there? Yeah, I'm not really sure what happened there. My goal was if I was running, my goal was to make the Olympics. If I was playing footy, my goal was to get drafted and, win a Brownlow or whatever it was. And, so my standards were pretty high, and I felt like at the time I was kind of doing, as much as I could to try, potentially get drafted. But
It probably come down to two things. I don't think I was really good enough to get drafted or play AFL for one, and for two, I just think I really, really liked athletics and I really, really liked sport. And that was when I was in year 11, and there was kids who were running really good times who weren't as good as me in juniors, and I just thought, you know what, I really like I miss athletics too much, and I don't like running enough to not do I don't like footy enough to not do running. So I just gave it up altogether, and to be honest with you, I haven't really had many regrets, which I thought would have been easy. I mean, I went to the AFL Grand Final last year. It would have been cool to play on that day, but besides that, got absolutely no regrets. So that's. Yeah, I just honestly think I just really, really like running and athletics.
I mean, at the tender years of 2021, 22, you represented Australia, in the 800 metres and 1,500 metres at the Rio Olympic Games. So, you said if you were running, that's where you wanted to get to, the Olympic Games. So, really, it's a pinch yourself moment, right, heading off to Rio?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, making the Olympics was just incredible. Like, it was just from February 2016 until April 2016, I was doing, these incredible races. I won the nationals. I got selected for my first team, and then I got to May. I ran my 1500 qualifier. So I was going to be the first time in X amount of years that, there was going to be an athlete doing two events. And I thought, this is pretty bloody cool. And at that time, you feel bulletproof. When you finish, just behind Rhodesia, and you run an Olympic qualifier and you're racing and you're beating good people, you just think, what's next? But I suppose making the Olympics was pinch yourself, time, and it was a good experience. But at the same time, I felt like I underperformed incredibly at the Olympics. So the Olympics, it's kind of a tough one to talk about, because obviously it was a dream to make it, but actually being there and underperforming is also kind of a heartbreaking story as well.
Well, I mean, on Rio, if we can just linger there for a little bit, Luke, I think you wouldn't be the first guest to share on the show that, the joy of making the Olympic team, and then the disappointment and the reflection around the performances at the Olympics, where their expectations weren't met for a whole variety of reasons. So I know that you're not the first athlete to experience that, but I mean, can you pull apart a little bit of the Rio experience, or it's too sore to talk about even now?
No, to be honest, not that I'm obviously not glad that I underperformed in Rio, but I certainly learnt a lot of things about myself as an athlete, and the type of training. I just learnt a lot about myself with the whole Rio experience, and I think probably what it came down to was I was in Europe in 2015, and I came home at the start of August, and I had 2 or 3 weeks off, and then pretty much said to Mum, I want to make the Olympics, and that's my goal. So from end of August until end of 2015, I was training pretty hard, and I was doing everything I could. I was trying to see my friends less. I was trying to go to the gym as much as I could. I upped my kilometers from probably at the start of that year from like 80, 90, 100 kilometers a week to about 120, 130 K. So I was training, more intense. I was trying to train on the back of, my training partners. Like I was trying to follow in, Ryan Gregson and Brett Robinson's footsteps. So I felt like I was doing everything in my power to get myself in a good spot. And then obviously, I went to Falls Creek a couple of times. And then by the time the Australian domestic season came, I felt bloody bulletproof. I felt invincible. I felt like every time I was on the start line, I think, all right, I'm going to do something special here, or I'm going to win this race by a lot, or I'm going to beat David Rhodesia, or I'm going to beat Ryan Gregson. Like that's how I felt. And that I did all those races, and then it came to national championships, and it was the exact same. But then by the time national championships came, it was I'd already done maybe I did a couple races in Tasmania that year. So I'd probably raced, somewhere around 10 times already. So I think looking back, and then I went to America the day after nationals, and then went into a training camp, and then did the European season, and did another altitude stint overseas, and then that took me up to the Olympics. So I think looking back, it was just too long of a season, and if I had my time again, I probably would have had a week or two break after the national championships and, just let my body rest a bit and then start again, whereas I kind of went the whole way through. And, it's easier to say now that, that's the right answer, because at the time I thought I was doing the right thing and I thought that that's the thing you had to do. But, sometimes you only realize you make mistakes once you look at it retrospectively. So, if I suppose I was to pinpoint one thing, it would just be to have a bit of a break after the domestic season and, try to not get as tired, leading up to the Olympics as I was. Because by the time I got to the start line, I was just incredibly fatigued and my body was just had peaked months ago, and I was at the absolute, I was at the absolute bottom of my fitness and my peak fitness that I wanted to be. So it was a tough one, but the next one I'll be 25, so I'll be a lot more wiser.
Oh, and look, I think I love what you shared there. That reflection's such a good teacher, examining and pulling it apart and putting that into practice then for Tokyo 2020. So we're all going to be excited to watch you go around there, Luke. All going to plan.
But also when you come back from well, I haven't done it that many times. When you come back from a championship or you come back from overseas, you kind of, when things go wrong, you kind of soul search and you kind of think, what the bloody hell happened? And you're like, you're trying to work everything out. So I've had sleepless nights, thinking about the Olympics and what went wrong. And when you have so much time thinking about one thing, you pull everything apart, and then you kind of get to this situation where you think there could be 10 things, and then you kind of confuse yourself. But I'm lucky enough. I learnt a pretty valuable lesson, by the age of 21. So hopefully, by the time I'm 25, and then the next one I'll be 29. So hopefully by then I'll be, a lot smarter, and I know exactly what works and what doesn't work, and hopefully I can have a fair bit of success.
And Luke, I mean, we look at the likes of our previous guest Nick Willis on the podcast, and we're all marveling at Nick, how he just continues to output in the 1500 metres. I mean, Nick's not running the 800 metres, but you've got plenty of years ahead on the clock. Luke, interesting thought or question for you. What was the first conversation? Obviously, your mum's a big supporter of yours. What was the first, conversation yourself and your mum had when you got the news that you'd made the Australian team?
So mine was kind of a interesting one, because I had the qualifier leading up to the national championships, and if you won the national championships and had the qualifier, you were automatic selection. So I think going into that race, there was 3 people with the qualifier: myself, Jeff Risley, and Josh Ralph. Jeff wasn't running, so it was Josh Ralph, me against Josh Ralph, and then 6 others. So I knew that if I won that race, I was automatic selection. So to be honest with you, my mum was in the crowd. My mum was there. All my friends were there. A lot of people I knew. And then on top of that, I also had this inbuilt pressure on myself where I just knew that this was it. Like, I felt like if I didn't win this race, I was going to, I might not get selected for the Olympics. So I ended up winning, and I crossed the line, and it was very emotional. I ran straight over to my mum, and we were just straight into hugs. I think my mum was crying. I think I might have had a little tear in my eyes. So it was good, because that was the moment that we both knew we were going to the Olympics. So but my mum's been a huge supporter of my athletics, and I can honestly say that if I didn't have my mum in my athletics, I definitely wouldn't have gone to the Olympics or the World Champs or World Juniors or whatever it was. So to share that moment with her for my first Olympics was something pretty special. So I that was the moment I found out they made the Olympics.
Absolutely, mate. Got to love mums, eh? Where would we be without them?
I'd be lost. I wouldn't even know how to cook or do washing, or I don't know. I'd struggle.
Oh, Luke, mate. In the lead up to Rio, you mentioned 2016. You're on a roll. Got to ask you about the Melbourne Track Classic, where you ran a PB of 1:45.16 in the 800 metres. Sorry, Luke, and obviously went head to head with dual Olympic champion in the 800 metres and world record holder David Rudisha. What was going through your head as you rounded? I think you guys are neck and neck right around that, the back bend and then up the home straight. What was going through your head? Did you legitimately think you were going to take him down, or what was going through your mind?
Well, like I was saying before, like at that time, I just felt like, honestly, like bulletproof, and just I felt like everything that I was doing, I felt like I could, beat someone or run a quick time. So my coach at the time said to me on maybe the Tuesday or the Thursday leading up to that race, he said, if Radish is tiring, go past him. And I thought, I was like, hang on a second, that's the greatest runner of all time. I'm going to struggle to go past him. But then going down the back straight, I was still with him, and I felt like on the top bend he was slowing down a bit. And I just thought, you know what? If you watch the replay, there's about that whole top bend is just full of people, and I don't know what it was. I kind of just had a whole heap of adrenaline, and I just thought, you know what, stuff it. So I tried to accelerate, and I got on his shoulder. And I honestly thought at one point I was going to go around him, but I got to the top of the bend, and he just thought, hang on a second, I'm the best runner of all time. I'm not going to let some 20-year-old Australian go past me. So he just he was running about third gear and went into fourth gear, and I was going into overdrive. So that night as well that's probably one of my favourite running memories that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. That was an incredible night, and I had a lot of fun. I've watched that video on YouTube maybe, I'm not even kidding, 100 times, just because I just enjoy that moment so much.
Well, listeners, we'll tag up that YouTube video in the show notes, so be sure to jump over and watch that race. It's an absolute classic run. So thanks for the entertainment there, Luke. Luke, we started the interview around Nitro, the unique Nitro Athletics event held down once again at Melbourne. What was that like for you? I mean, we saw some interesting formats. You were running incredibly strong. What was your one major highlight, if you like, from the Nitro Athletics event?
Well, to be honest with you, besides the Commonwealth Games in 2006, and I didn't go to the Olympics in 2000, but the Olympics in 2000 was there was actually common everyday people, just people in the street who were actually talking about athletics, and not to mention there was also people going to watch athletics, and there was also people watching athletics on Channel 7 and talking about it. So there was actually a bit of a buzz around athletics just for a brief period of time. So a sport in Australia that doesn't get much attention, it felt like it was hot press. It felt like everyone knew what was going on. Everyone knew that Bolt was in Australia. Everyone knew that Bolt was racing the Australians, and the Australians were taking on the Africans and the Europeans and the Americans and the New Zealanders and the Chinese. So it was just good that athletics became a household topic for once. So that was good. So it brought a fair bit of attention. Another good thing was just being on the same track as Usain Bolt, because like I said, I went to the Olympics last year, and I've been to a few meets where Bolt has been, but it's something different when Bolt's literally just like a fingertip away, and right before you're about to do one of your relays, Bolt's bloody talking crap to you, and he's putting you down. He's like, my team's going to beat yours, or so it's just a few little cool things that just made it just a cool little experience. And I was actually on YouTube the other day, and I was watching all the replays from Nitro, and I just thought, that was pretty cool.
It was very cool. I think all Aussies just, love the way you guys, really stuck it to the other nations and athletes. And there's that great photo on your Instagram gallery, Luke. And listeners will post this up in the show notes. But if you're on Instagram, jump over to Luke's gallery at Luke Mathews, and it's the 12th of February, and it's that great photo of you rounding the bend. And in the background, you got obviously all the crew, Usain and all the athletes, and that's one for to be blown up, isn't it, on the bedroom wall?
Yeah. When I'm retired and I can't run anymore, I'll tell my kids about how good I once was, and I got to be on the same track as Usain Bolt.
And aside from the banner with Usain, was there anything that he actually said to you that was encouraging or just memorable for you?
To be honest, not really. Every time I saw, every time, because at the end of the day, it was a running race, but it was also like a performance for the TV, and so every time I saw him, it was always like heckling or putting down. But I'm sure I know that he had a lot of positive things to say to people like Riley Day and Stubbsy and I know that he was very positive and gave a lot of inspiration to Matt Ramsden, who was on his team. So although he loved the whole smart aleck and playing up to the camera, he was very supportive of some of the sprinters and some of the younger members of the Nitro teams.
So, Luke, before we throw into a performance round and get inside your training world, just covering another major meet, you're fresh back from the London IAAF World Athletics Champs that have just taken place. How did the campaign play out for you? Were you happy with your performances? You're over there for the 8 and the 15. Sorry, Luke.
Just the 15.
Just the 15.
I wanted to qualify for both, but I ended up falling just short of the 800 times. So just the 15.
So just the 15. And how did the World Champs play out for you, Luke?
The World Champs, it was pretty good. I mean, I kind of had a bit of a less than ideal preparation leading into it. So to be honest, I was just happy that I made the start line for my first round and changed training a little bit the 2 weeks leading up to it and managed to win my heat, which was, looking back, was pretty cool because it was a stadium of 60,000 people. There was a hell of a lot of Australians. My brother was in the crowd, so I won the heat, which was like I said, awesome. I was really happy with myself, and went through to the semis as the quickest qualifier, and then I came 7th in the semi-final. So I was 2 off making the final, and I was also 0.3, so that was kind of a bitter pill to swallow. But that was, to be honest with you, I was pleased with my World Championship performance. I think I ended up finishing around 15th or something like that. So I was happy with how it went, and like I said, I'm still finding my feet with all this major championship stuff. So the next World Championships I'll be 24. And next Olympics I'll be 25, so hopefully then I can, make the final and do a little bit better. And I'm still finding my feet.
Absolutely, mate. You got years ahead on the clock. Your PB 1,500 metres, 3:35.57. What did you run in London? Just to put us in perspective, how close to your PB were you?
So in the heat, I ran 3:38.1. So that was the quickest qualifier of the night. So that was. Yeah, that was a pretty good time. I think it was about my 5th quickest time, maybe my 6th quickest time.
Yep.
So that was not too bad. And then in the semi, I ran 3:40.9, and I think 3:40.6 was 5th. So I was 0.3 off that. And I think my heat was one in 3:39. Actually, no, my heat was running 3:40, so there was 7 people between 3:40.1 and 3:40.9, which was a bit frustrating. And then the other heat was ran in 3:38, I think. So, and then the final ended up being one in about 3:33. But I think that the point to take out of the semi-final was I actually timed my last 800 of my semi-final, and I closed in 1:51. So that was something that I was pretty happy with. So I think on paper I ran better in my semi-final than I did in my heat. It's just that, I had a pretty hard semi-final. Yeah.
And I mean, Luke, in terms of your PBs, your miles 3:54.53 from 2017 run on in Eugene over in the US. What's that like, breaking the 4-minute mile? Another bit of a moment.
Yeah, another bit of a moment. I think
only breaking it, smashing, I should say, Luke, to qualify that.
Well, so I actually broke the 4-minute mile in February of 2016, and the 4-minute mile, it's I think when you're coming through, because it's, you got to run about, your PB has to be around 3:40 or so to break 4 minutes, and at the time my PB was 3:37, and I was doing this race at Melbourne Uni, which was paced by a couple of people in my old group. And they, I knew that I was capable of doing it, but my PB going into it was 4:17. And I'm not sure what it was, but every time I ran a mile, I just always ran stinkers. Like I just always ran terribly. Like I was either sick or I just was a bit tired, and I don't know, threw in the towel. So I was a bit nervous going into that first race, and then breaking the 4 minute miles. That was actually when I broke it in 2016. It was an incredible night because it was. John Landy was actually there watching the race, and he presented the medals afterwards. So looking back, that was a really special night. And to break the 4 minute barrier, it's just another cool thing to think that, only like around 55 have done it in Australia, and I think only maybe 1,300 or something like that have done it in the world. So it's pretty special, and it's something that not many runners can say they've done. But I'm glad that I can say I've done it once. I'm glad I've done it twice, but also I'm hopeful that I can do it, another 20 or so times.
Absolutely. And talking about an elite club, your photo that I'm looking at here on Skype, Luke's actually got you with Seb Coe in the middle of yourself. You look like you're holding a beer, Luke, but clearly you're not. You're holding a water bottle. But what was that like, meeting the great Sir Seb?
Yeah, that was cool. So that was at World Juniors. It's a photo of myself holding a bottle of water. Just emphasise that.
Yeah, exactly.
With Sebastian Coe in the middle and then Morgan McDonald on the right. And yeah, that was incredible. So that was the World Junior Champs, and I think that was around the time when Sebastian Coe got appointed as the president or whatever his role is there. And I've always been very curious about the whole Coe and Ovett and Cram era, and at the time I was coached by my mum, and my mum used to look a lot into what Sebastian Coe's dad, what coaching he did and how he trained Sebastian. So I was very curious about Sebastian Coe, but he was one of the greatest runners of all time, and he there was that period, I think it was I can't remember what year it was, 1980 something. He broke 4 world records in the space of 40 days or something like that. So he was he's someone that I wish was running now, just so I could know what he was doing and race against him, because he's one of the legends of our sport, and he'll go down in history as the best.
Absolutely, and if you had an Instagram gallery back then, you would have been hotly following it, if not that you were born. So
he would have millions of followers.
So, Luke, let's do a performance round. So, a bit of a rapid-fire succession of questions. You ready?
Yep.
Luke Mathews, what's a training session that you most dislike?
Training session I most dislike? The one that I get really anxious and nervous about, and I know is bloody hard, but at the same time it's very beneficial, is 6 by 800 meter hills. It's a staple session for my old group, and it's done under my old coach, and he and I don't know what it is. It's just 800 meter hills. There's something daunting about it, and it's just this war of attrition where you do the first one and you're okay. You do the second one and you start to feel it. Then the third one, and then the fourth one, and then usually the fifth one there's a quicker rep, and then the sixth one you come home. So I don't know what it is, but I feel like that one is just like a build-up of lactic, and by the last one, you honestly feel like you need to do a number 2. Like you're just so sick and so tired, and then by the time, because it's 800 meters hard up and then 800 meters jog down. So after the 6th rep, you've done 9.6k worth. 9.6k worth of work, and you just absolutely spent, and the rest of the day is usually spent in bed or doing nothing at all.
And from recollection, Luke, I have a feeling Charlotte Purdue may have shared this when she was training with the squad as one of her most disliked. It might have been Charlotte or Eloise or someone, but So the dreaded 6 by 800 hill repeats. Luke, what's the training session you most love?
Training session I most love? It'd have to be something during my taper week, or something easy like a bit of a threshold and some 200s, just because at that time you kind of the work's all done and you just do a little bit of something to tick the legs over. But another session I really like as well is I really like doing short hills, just because I feel like I'm pretty good at them. I'm pretty quick, and whenever I do short hills with someone, I'm usually beating them, so it's a bit of a pride thing as well. So probably, session I enjoy the most would have to be short hills. I really like them. And
to give us a bit more detail there, Luke, what are we talking, 50 metres, 100 metres?
Yeah, so sessions I've done in the past have usually been like a 2K threshold with, maybe 4 by 300 metre hills, and then a 2K threshold, 4 by 150 metre hills, and then a 2K threshold. So once again, it's one of those sessions that's tough, but I really enjoy doing short hills.
Yeah, mate, that's a very tough session. Favourite pre-race meal, Luke? What fuels you? What's fueled you before the Worlds, the Olympics, World Juniors?
Pre-race meal. I'm not sure what it is, but to be honest, the night before running good races, I've usually had a chicken parmigiana. I'm not sure what it is there, but I've had a chicken parmigiana a lot of times just because it's, you get the carbs of the chips and you get a bit of protein from the chicken. But because I've been in meat hotels and you're in the World Championship hotel and stuff like that, you try to eat a little bit cleaner and you don't get chicken parmigianas everywhere. So I usually try to just have something simple like a bit of rice, some meat, so either salmon or chicken or something like that, just with some veggies. So I usually, the day or two leading up to a race, I usually try to eat relatively clean. So just so I'm pretty light and I'm not carrying any junk around.
And in terms of pretty light, what's your this is a side step here? What's your sort of race weight at typically, Luke?
I fluctuate a lot because I feel like I'm a lot bigger than the other middle distance runners. So my goal weight is usually about 70, but I've raced at 69 before and I've been fine. I've raced at 71, 72 before and I've been fine. So anywhere between 69 and 71 or so, I'm relatively happy with. So I'm kind of, I've worried about my weight a lot in the past, and I've also done things, where I've skipped meals and I've, eaten bad food. And I just think the thing that I like to do is just eat whatever I want, and that's that way you stress less, and the less you stress, your weight's just going to, it's not going to fluctuate, and it's not going to, go all over the shop. So if I'm somewhere around there, I'm happy. But to be honest with you, I've tried to not get on the scales as much either because I kind of psych myself out if I'm a little bit higher. So, but if I had a goal weight, it'd be 70.
Yeah, interesting the psychology, isn't it? Even at an elite level, more so than an elite level in many instances.
Yeah, but I think because you're around people all over the European and international circuit, and there's a lot of people that stress about weight, and it's all well and good because at the end of the day we're doing a professional sport, and 1 kilo or a certain amount of grams is very important. But at the same time, I just think for me myself, if I eat what I want but not go over the top, I usually race pretty well. But that's me. I try to just be as relaxed as I can about my weight and my food.
Oh, that's good, keeping it simple. Luke, bedtime, morning time, what's that look like in your world?
Oh, bedtime, I'm rubbish. I struggle to get to sleep before 12. I'm not sure what it is, but so that's me. And I'm usually up, literally doing nothing. Like I'm not even up reading or studying. I'm literally up watching TV or watching Netflix or on my phone or something. So that's about me. And then I'm usually up most days at about 7:30, just to get a morning run done or my session or whatever it is. But I usually try to nap for an hour or two during the day. So across 24 hours, I'll probably be asleep for hopefully 9-ish hours.
Yeah, that's great. Luke, what are the injuries you've had to overcome to date?
Touch wood, and I literally just touched the side of my bed then. I've been very good. I've been, fortunately I've been pretty good with injuries, and, but I've had little things where I've, knocked my knee or banged my, shin or just stuff like that, where I've literally haven't been off the track for longer than a week, with an injury, haven't been off the track longer than a day or so with an injury. So I'm pretty robust, and I've got a pretty, good, physical build. So I've been good with injuries, and I think the most recent one I have was when I was in London. I rolled my ankle really badly. I kind of tripped down a gutter and I rolled my ankle, and it just was the size of a golf ball. But even then, it was just before a race, and I still only had 1 day off. But I'd see a fair bit of I'd see some physio on that time. But injuries, yeah, to be honest, haven't had to overcome a whole heap of stuff, which I'm very fortunate of.
And great constitution, I think, Luke. And Luke, who's the athlete that you most admire and why?
In track and field?
Can be any athlete, Luke.
Okay. I'd suppose I have to look at it two ways. One, there's the side that I admire and try to that I look at as a goal, and I think to be honest with you, the one that I look up to the most would have to be Ryan Gregson, just because I've been following him for, over 10 years now, and everything that I do in athletics, whether that's diet or my warm up or my gym or even the way that I try to run or my jogs and my pace, and that it's all influenced one way or another back to Ryan, just because I've looked up to him. And the thing that I like the most about him is that he ran some quick times when he was young. He broke the Australian record when he was 20 years old, ran 3:31. But then he's also had injury after injury, and he's had adversity after adversity, and I don't know how he's got just an incredible, will, where he's been able to put that all behind him and literally rise above. So I think, Ryan is someone that really, and it's not even that he's a good runner. He's also just incredibly focused, incredibly determined, and he's always looking at, new ways to make himself better. And so I just admire Ryan in that sense. And then at the same time, you get him off a track, and he's keen to have a beer, he's keen to have a chat, keen to talk about sport and not athletics. So I think he's just a good, well-rounded human, and he's just he's a good role model for young kids, or for people who are in the sport. And that's it. But also at the same time, I really look up to Conor McGregor, just because I think he's got that incredible work ethic. He's got this amazing ability to talk, incredible game, and then he usually backs it up. So those two, for different reasons, but also similar reasons, those two are two athletes that I look up to.
And I don't think there was a red-blooded male on the planet, Luke, that wasn't engaged in the recent McGregor versus Mayweather fight, right?
And if you weren't watching it, you're reading about it or you're hearing about it. So I think Conor McGregor's he's changing sport. He's something special. Yeah,
absolutely. Luke, the toughest competitor you've ever raced, who was it and why?
Toughest competitor? I'd almost have to say Gregson again. Since I've been at the in 2016 and 2017 and even 2015, I've kind of raced a whole heap of people, but I've also raced Ryan, a fair few times in that time. And, he's just one guy that I just struggled to beat. And I beat him for the first time this year in a crappy race in the Czech Republic. But I remember one time I raced him at the Briggs Track Classic in Hobart, and I got told that day to run him off his legs. So from the gun, I got behind the pacer and I just went as hard as I could, and I was going flat out, and I thought I'd done enough to break him. And I got to 100 meters to go, and he went straight past me like I was standing still. And I'm just like, what do I have to do to beat this guy? And then I raced him in Europe that year, and the exact same thing. He came past me 200 meters to go, and I couldn't do anything. So I suppose Ryan would have to be my toughest competitor, but I'm trying to think. When I was growing up, Zach Patterson, who's his same age as me, we raced each other in juniors from when we were, 8 or 9 years old. Me and him were back and forth. He'd win one race, I'd win one race, and that kind of went up all the way through until about 19 or 20 years old. So through my junior years, Zach, and through my senior years would have to be Pro Grego.
And is there a mantra that you use, Luke, when you race? Is there regular self-talk that you've got going through your head, either while you're running or while you stand on the start line?
No, not really. To be honest, I kind of have the same tactic going in. There's a few little things that I've tried to work on recently, because I think, I feel like I have a couple of flaws in my style. And I also think that there's been times where I've been prone to, when people are getting away from me, I just give up a little. So I think something that I've been working on recently is just literally to not give up and just make sure that, my triggers with my style just always going. So when I'm on the start line, I'm literally just thinking, just be happy when you walk off the track. So I suppose that's it. Yeah, be happy when you walk off the track. And that's something that even my mum said when I was, growing up. So that's probably the biggest thing.
That's cool. One word to describe your racing style, what would that be, Luke?
If you're racing me, tough.
Tough. How would you describe being in the zone, Luke?
No distractions, not letting anything get in your way, and literally doing anything to make sure that you win or get the goal or the achievement you want.
When was the last time you were in the zone?
World champs, for sure. Oh, actually, no. I'd probably say training over the last 2 weeks. I've been pretty motivated, and there's nothing that's gotten in my way.
That's cool. Luke, what's you're nearly out of the performance zone. The best recovery tip, what would that be? Luke Mathews.
Best recovery tip. I usually do 20-minute cool down, straight into recovery pants, get in the boots, get a good meal with plenty of carbs, protein shake, and I usually try to wash it all down with a Gatorade or a Powerade. And then after a race, I struggle to sleep, but just laying parallel and trying to sleep. Yeah, that's the best recovery.
Great. And what's the hardest?
And a massage. And a
medium massage. Awesome, mate. So you're ticking all the boxes, Luke. Well done. You're going to have a great long career. Luke, what's the hardest session you've ever done? Ever?
Hardest session I've ever done? I'd have to say when I was coached by my mum between the years of 2011 and 2015, we used to do a session 10 days out where we'd do 5 400s. 5 400s. And the goal was to do them pretty much flat out. And I'd have 5 or 6 minutes recovery. And I think the best I ever did that, I did it like 51, 52, 52, 53, 54. So that was, and afterwards I was dizzy. I could barely walk. Like it was just, I was lactic literally to the eyeballs. So that's probably the hard. And I did that maybe 4 or 5 times with Mum when she coached me, and that was tough.
And Luke, last question in the performance round. What's the strangest or the funniest thing you've ever seen, either racing or training?
Strangest thing. To be honest, one of the strangest or funniest things was when we're in London this year. We're in a place we based in a place called Teddington, and there's Bushy Park, which is a royal park, and they've got heaps of deer within the middle there, and there's also deer with the big bloody bucks. Like they're scary, like they're huge. And I remember one time we were going through this narrow part of of Bushy Park, and there's literally, it's literally only 2 meters wide. And at that point, there was about 20 deer on each side. And I remember I was with Geordie Williams and Jack Rayner, and we went straight through. And a New Zealand athlete who was staying with us, Camille Buscombe, she was behind, and we thought, hang on a second, we'll just see what happens with Camille, just in case she gets into a bit of trouble. And Camille just stood there. She tried to go around, but there was actually like a little canal, so she was just like trapped. And we just watched her for about 2 or 3 minutes try to work it out, and by the end she ended up just squeezing through, and the deer just let her go. So that was probably one of the funnier things I've seen, but that's off the top of my head. But there's probably been other funnier things, but that most recently I had a good laugh at.
And so if we ever have Camille on the program, Luke will ask her what scares her the most, and that story's probably going to re-emerge.
I reckon. Yeah, that was funny looking back. I mean, at the time she was probably petrified, and we were a bit worried, but looking back, yeah, pretty funny.
Everyone got through. Luke, well done. You're out of the performance round. Bring a couple of final questions here, Luke. There's a few listener questions that actually have come through, so I'm just going to quickly throw to those, Luke. And young Ethan's asked, and we kind of touched on it, but how good was Luke when he was 13 years old? He's specifically asking when you were 13.
When I was 13, so that I would have been year 7. I think my PBs were maybe around 2:13, and I think it was 4:28. Looking back, but yeah, year 7. I was relatively late to puberty, so that was kind of a bit of an awkward time where I was doing a good race here or there, but at the same time I was really struggling against the older boys. So I was good. I'd win the occasional state champs, and I'd go. I'm not even sure if I ran nationals that year, but I was just okay. But I think the good thing to be is be patient and wait until, because at that point it's not even an even playing field. You're racing against people. You're racing against people who are have the body type of an 18-year-old, but at the same time there's other kids who look like 11 or 12-year-olds. So it's just uneasy. So it's just a bit of an uneven playing field. So I wouldn't take any times from a 13-year-old. I'd take it all with a grain of salt, because it's just, you got to wait until you're about 18, 19, and even then it's not even an even playing field. So I think you just got to wait until your senior ranks, and even then it's all about just being patient and waiting your time.
And Luke, I think that's such great advice, and Ethan, I hope that really helps. Nick Willis touched on his concept of his career being so successful for so long that he didn't hit puberty till later in the journey, and therefore that's helped him with his peak testosterone levels peaking later in life. So it's a really interesting concept. Luke, Joggers World have asked, will Luke focus on 800 or the 1500 metres at the Com Games 2018 here on the Gold Coast, or both? And how much time did Luke take off after the Worlds, London that is, knowing that the Com Games is just around the corner?
So for the Com Games, at the moment, I've had a chat to my mum, and I've also been getting some coaching advice from a guy based out of the UK. And I think at the moment the plan is to do both. But that being said, that means that I'm going to have to race 4, possibly 5 times at our national championships, and then also 5 times at the Commonwealth Games. So I just have to factor it both in. But at the moment, the plan is to run both and hopefully get picked for both. And yeah, but if I had an option, if I was to do just one, I'd probably say the 1500, just because I think I'm better over that distance, and I think there's more of a chance to win that because, the 800, it's tough because you got to verse people who can run 45 seconds, whereas the 1500, I feel like it's a bit more of an even playing field. And time off after Rio, to be honest, I didn't have that much time off. After London, I didn't take an incredible amount of time off. I had 3 or 4 days in London where I did nothing. Hung out with mates, had a few beers, chilled out, didn't even run. And then I came back, kind of the same, saw some local mates and had a few beers. But I've still been keeping fit, but I've just been keeping the intensity relatively low and just, giving myself more a mental break, if anything, because I feel like that's what I need. But the physical side, I've been keeping fit and just trying not to put on too much weight and just, training up. But in the next month or so, that's when the proper training will start, and that's when I'll, try to take it to the next level and really get a lot fitter and, make those small little, improvements and gains where I can, use what I did to make the semi-final at the World Champs, use that as a stepping stone to hopefully get a medal game. So I suppose I'm just, I didn't have a whole heap of time off after London is what my goal is there.
And I think this is a bit of a fun one for you, maybe from a mate. Jack Davies says, how many times has Luke turned a 40-minute hilly tempo run into a 2.5-hour long run after getting lost?
Yeah, I saw that on the Instagram, and I'm not happy that Jack Davies asked that. So funny story about that. So when I was in 2012, I had a good relationship with Ryan Gregson, and at the time he was based in Ballarat with living at Collis Birmingham's house with Brett Robinson. So there was 3 of them there, and they said, come down to Ballarat and you can come spend the weekend there and we'll do a small little training camp. And I thought, I had a little bit of time off school because I was in year 11 at the time. I was like, yeah, great. They were just coming off the London Olympics, and Brett was just made the move to the group. So I went down there, and mind you, my weaknesses are hills and threshold runs. So they do this thing through the forest of Ballarat where it's a hilly tempo, which is my kryptonite. And we get 5 minutes into this hilly tempo. There's Collis, there's Duayoa, there's Davies, there's Gregson, there's Brett. All these people who have done this a handful of times. I'm 5 minutes in and I'm already 200 metres off the back. And turns out that there was this point where we hit a fork in the road and everyone had to take a right, but I took the left. And then, long story short, I got lost. I ended up by myself in the middle of the bloody Ballarat forest, and I knew certain landmarks from where the house was, where I ended up running to certain point. I somehow made it back to the house, and I put that all together, and it took me 2.5 hours to get back to the house. So it was an absolute nightmare.
Oh, gosh.
That's opening up some wounds.
All in jest, I'm sure.
Dave, he's a good guy. He's one of my good mates. So that's fine.
That's cool. Luke, let's boil this down. One bit of training advice you could give to listeners looking to perform at their best, Luke, across all sports, all endeavours, not just track and field. What would your one bit of advice be, Luke, to listeners? One
bit of advice is listen to your body, I'd say, because, no one knows your body like yourself, and there's going to be times when you're going to be in pain, or you're going to be a bit tired, and you just need to take that step back. So that's a bit of advice, but at the same time, honestly, I think you just got to enjoy it, because running is an incredibly tough sport, and there's also, it's not a very, wealthy sport. It's, unless you're Usain Bolt, you don't make an incredible amount of money. So you got to actually really enjoy the sport. And there's going to be times when you're racing, Kenyans, and you're racing Europeans, and there's going to be times when it's tough. So if you're not enjoying what you do, and you also have to deal with all the outside factors, it just makes it a tough sport. So enjoy what you do, enjoy the group that you're going to be training with, make friends, and just have fun with it. So that'd be, you asked for one, but that'd be my two pieces of advice.
No, look, that's brilliant, Luke. And talking about...
It's very, 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 very cliche, but it's something that I've learnt over the last year or so, that, it's a tough sport. So you really have to enjoy it. You have to be passionate about athletics, because it'll chew you up and spit you out. So you really have to enjoy it.
And certainly, I mean, as you say, you make parallels to other elite sports, and certainly, if you're talking about our friend Conor McGregor there, the payday is a lot less, isn't it, for making an Olympic final in track and field?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is the Usain Bolts, and there's the Mo Farahs, and there's the royalty, the people who are on, huge pay packets. But at the same time, there's also a lot of people who run for nothing, and have to work full time, as well as trying to be a professional athlete. So it's tough, but I feel like if you just persevere, and if you usually stick with it, you see something. You see, I've started to see a little bit of the light at the end of the tunnel, but I'm still getting there.
Good on
just
you.
Through persevering for since I was a young'un.
Perseverance over time, you can't beat it. Luke, I've got to ask, because my mind's intrigued, just to quickly go back before we come to the last question here, and that is, you mentioned you're working on some technique things yourself. Can you let us in a little bit on the things you're focusing on with your technique?
So it's something that I picked up. It's definitely something that, like, I think one of the flaws that I think I have is I have a bit of a forward lean just from, like, my pelvis up. So I'm trying to just get that a little bit straighter. And I think something that I've been doing with my gym coach as well is I got a bit of stiffness through my shoulders. So when I get tired, my shoulders lift, and also I rock my shoulders forward and backwards, and my arms kind of come across me instead of straight up and down. So I've just been trying to work on that as much as possible, and but also my goal over the next 6 months or so is to see a sprint coach and just try iron out the small creases of my style, and just make sure that it's a little bit better, because I think we live in a sport of 1%ers, so I think that I just want to try and make sure that my style is just a little bit better. But at the same time, if you're working on your style, you can't really do much harm. You're only going to benefit yourself. And if you're working on your style, it's just another form of cross training. So I think that's my goal. But at the same time, if you look at Mo Farah, his style isn't perfect. If you look at the Kenyans, their styles aren't perfect. So I think you just it's just something that you have to work with, but also it's something you have to work on. So that's something that I want to do. So I just want to make myself a little bit more upright, make sure my arms are going forward and backwards, and I need to get a little bit less movement through my head. I seem to rock my head side to side as well.
And it's amazing. I mean, efficiency can be masked. Some great running efficiency can be masked with some biomechanical anomalies, if you like. It's really quite a fascinating duality, I find, in sports science, how that can play out. Luke, final question, fun question. 3 people at your dinner table, living or past. Who's at your dinner table, Luke Mathews, and why?
Okay, so this is a good question, because Ryan Gregson asked this. He's asked this a few times, and mine seems to change every time. So last time I spoke, it would have to be last time Ryan asked that question, I think I said Barack Obama, just because, I don't know, the US government, there's something that's just interesting that's going on there. I'm relatively interested in him. He's not the president anymore, but I'm relatively interested in American politics. So I think that'd be, a cool thing to know, and just, the America's secrets and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'd like to sit down with Leonardo DiCaprio, because he's my favorite actor, and I also think he's probably the world's coolest person ever. So I just think he would know every celebrity secret, which so that's one. And my third one, I'd probably have to say Alberto Salazar, just because the Oregon projects, there's lots of rumors floating around, but also at the same time they have the best athletes in the world. So I'd love to speak to him and know everything, because I think there'd be so many questions that a lot of people would want to know, and there's also a lot of things that I think he'd be able to tell about, how to make an Olympic champion, because he had the Alberto Salazar had the Olympic champion over 1500, 5K and 10K, and the bronze medalist over the marathon. So that's something pretty special. So he's doing something right. So I'd like to, probably have a chat with all three of them and know every secret that they've ever had.
Yeah, brilliant. And now, Lukey, on that, Nike, obviously a supporter of yours. Anyone else that you want to just say thanks to?
Thanks. So get looked after really well by Athletics Australia and the Victorian Institute of Sport. Athletics Australia were great with everything they did leading up to World Champs. Same with the VIS. They kind of have everything at your fingertips. I was speaking with a psychologist, just for anything, once a week, every few weeks, just to make sure that everything was in check and I was ready to go for World Champs. As well as that, I'd like to give a little plug to the Sanctuary Lakes Foundation. So they're just a foundation that's run out of the Sanctuary Lakes Golf Club, and they just they offer a cadet service where they just pretty much help me with a few funds here and there. But also, if I was to give one plug, I'd have to say that'd be my mum. She's the one that's kept me on the rails the last few years, and she was the one that took my training the 2 weeks leading up to World Champs, and she was the one that I'd like to say that got me in a position to win my World Champs heat and just miss out on making the final. So that's my little thanks at the end of this podcast.
Kudos to Mrs. Mathews. And, mate, lastly, to wrap it all up, what's your physical challenge going to be, Luke Mathews? For the listeners of the show, it can be entry level, it can be extremely difficult. What do you got for us this week?
Okay, I think a good challenge, because I ran a couple of these this year, would be how quick you can run a 1K. So that's either on a trail, or that can either be on a track, so 2.5 laps of a track, or 1K on a trail. I ran 2 this year. I ran 1 on the road and I ran 1 on a track in the Czech Republic. And my PB is 2:19, which is 3 seconds short of the Australian record, so a fair bit off. So that's a good little indicator. But I usually do my jogs at around 4 minutes per kilometre, and if I was to do 8 by 1K, I'd probably average around somewhere between 250 and 255 for 8 of them with a minute recovery. So that's my goal, and those are some indicators of what I do my 1Ks at. And they are very solid, Luke Mathews. So listeners, let's have a little bit of fun. Tag us in. Luke, we can find you on social. Your handle's at Luke Mathews, right? With yep. 1T for Mathews. Yeah, so at Luke Mathews on Instagram, and it's at Luke Mathews 95 on Twitter. So those are my handles, and I use them pretty frequently.
Yep. So take the challenge on, listeners, and let us know how you go. And we'll have a bit of fun. We'll do a few random prizes. A couple of the You Can Run Pay and free books coming out to some of the good entries there. So Luke Mathews, mate, I wish you on behalf of the listeners all the best for the journey ahead, and thanks for sharing so openly and around your running career to date. And mate, certainly you've got plenty of good years ahead, and I'm for one am looking forward to seeing you run here on the Gold Coast in 2018. So mate, all the best for the remainder of 2017 and into 2018.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks a lot. It's going to be it's a really exciting time to be an Australian athlete leading up to the Commonwealth Games, because I think the domestic season is going to be pretty special. But it's also a very optimistic time to be a middle distance runner in the world. If there's people like Ryan Gregson who's making finals. There's there was Pierre Boss, who's just a white, strong athlete, and he won the 800 at the World Champs. And there was Philip Ingebrigtsen, who's just another tall, strong bloke who got a medal at the World Champs. So I think to be an Australian athlete, in particular to be an Australian middle distance athlete, it's a very optimistic time, and it's going to be an exciting next 7 months or 8 months, however long Commonwealth Games is, but it's also going to be an exciting lead up to Tokyo, and then hopefully 2024.
Beyond, mate. All the best, Luke, and thanks for sharing once again.
No worries. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
So there you have it, another episode of the Physical Performance Show. I trust you enjoyed this episode, and if you enjoyed Luke's sharings, be sure to let both Luke and I know by tagging us in on a comment on social media. Jump over to the show notes for all links, including Luke's handles. If you'd like to subscribe, listeners, to the podcast, it's really simple. Just hit subscribe from your favourite podcast app, and this will populate the program each and every week into your device. If you know, listeners, someone that would enjoy today's program, be sure to tag them in. Share the podcast with someone. Share it with a mate, a running friend, someone that you know enjoys pursuing their physical best. That would mean the world to both Luke and myself. So massive thank you in advance. Thank you also to the two good folk who make this show possible week in, week out. That is Daryl Misson, audio engineer, and also Sophie Walker at Pogo Physio on all things podcast administration and marketing. Lastly, listeners, if you're into running, you can now pick up my Amazon running and jogging bestseller over on iBooks or also Audible. So you can run pain free, and it's 330 pages of goodness into you as you run along. The book's designed to help you achieve injury-free and faster running. It does that through a 5-step process. The book's also available through Amazon, shipping internationally, and of course domestically via pogophysio.com.au. Listeners, coming up next week on the Physical Performance Show, I catch up with Australian Olympic marathoner Liam Adams. We keep the running theme going. Liam shares some gold around his journey in athletics so far, the early years, the highs, the lows, and the learnings. So be sure to tune in next week to catch Liam Adams. Until then, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.